Gray is working as a mechanic and his wife works for a large technology company. With the help of his wife's electric car, Gray wants to deliver one of his customers' cars. He persuades his wife to accompany him and they were on the move with an electric car. When Gray arrives there, he and his wife meet with a man named Elon, and she is surprised to see him. She scolds him for not telling her that they were going to meet Elon. He was a regular customer of Gray, but his nature is weird. Because he even didn't know how to greet him while meeting him. The reason was he rarely comes out of his huge house. He keeps busy inventing new things, and recently he invented an AI chip. He shows them the chip and tells them that this chip can do anything because it has a lot of powers. Seeing this invention, Gray was returning home with his wife. Suddenly, their car moves to another path. He notices the car is moving in the wrong path and his wife asks the car to move it home. But the car replies there is a problem with it. Gray tries to stop it by manually pressing the brakes, but the car doesn't stop and increases its speed. Their car collides with a speed breaker and tilts. After getting minor injuries, they were trying to move out of the car, and at the same time a car stops near them. 4 people get out of the car and hold them after taking them out. The police drone camera was trying to recognize them, but it couldn't. Gray says, "Please leave us and in return take our money." They don't listen to Gray, and after shooting his wife, they leave while breaking his spinal cord of him. His wife was crying due to severe pain, but he can't do anything except witness his wife's death. Gray is admitted to the hospital for 3 months, and after being paralyzed, he returns home in a wheelchair. He has machines to do his tasks as he can't do anything except order. He used to deny his mother's help, but eventually, he has to accept it. One day Gray with his mother meets a detective, and he asks him about his wife's killers. The detective says they are unknown and the police are still investigating. "We will find them soon." But Gray gets disappointed hearing this again and again. Being tired of his life, he takes an overdose of his medicine with a machine. While he was in the hospital, his regular customer comes to visit him. He shows Gray a light of hope and asks him to remember the AI chip. With the help of that chip, he can walk easily and he will have more strength and power. But Gray refuses his offer while saying, "I don't want to live this life." Elon emotionally blackmails him and eventually forces him to accept his offer. He just wanted to test this chip in a human being. After getting the chip in his spinal cord, Gray finally learns to move his body. Meanwhile, Gray stands on his feet and could not control his joy as he has recovered. Elon was also celebrating his successful experiment. Later he signs a contract with Gray to hide this experiment from everyone. Returning home, he discovers a package from the detective. There was Gray's wife's post-mortem report and some info related to her case. Suddenly, Gray notices a voice. The voice was saying, "Can I say something to you?" Gray sees around but he doesn't see anyone. After some time, the voice says, "I am the AI chip inside you." Gray thinks maybe he has gone insane, but the chip says, "No, you are not mad." It tries to help Gray to identify his wife's killers. Chip shows him a tattoo on one's body. It wasn't clear, that's why Gray doesn't discover anything. The chip says, "I have made a clear image of this tattoo. I can show you if you want." With his permission, the chip draws a clear image of the tattoo. He discovers about the tattooed man while understanding the tattoo. He thinks of informing the police about it, but the chip reminds him that Elon has forbidden him to do this when he signed the papers. Gray reaches there, but there were police drones, so he stays in the wheelchair. When the drone leaves, he secretly moves inside the house and tries to search for the evidence. But before he could search for anything, he hears the voice of someone approaching, and it was none other than the killer. After noticing the messed up table, he sees Gray and holds him to ask how did he find him? Gray doesn't answer and asks him, "Who killed my wife?" The killer was dominant on Gray, and due to that, the chip takes his permission to do something. As Gray gives permission, the chip attacks the killer and kills him brutally. Gray gets shocked seeing this because he doesn't want to kill anybody. The chip and Gray remove all the proof while the detective discovers from the post-mortem that there was a weapon inserted in his body. Elon becomes furious at Gray and scolds him for the murder. He says, "It was a risky task and I didn't insert this chip in you to do these tasks. Next time, you will not do anything like this. Otherwise, the chip will be taken from you." On another side, the detective was discovering who has ended the killer. After getting the information that before the killer's murder, Gray was wandering in the area, she asks him, "We have seen you there at the time of the murder?" She says, "We suspect the man has killed your wife and we have a huge criminal record of him." Gray says, "Okay, I'm surprised. But if you are thinking I have killed him, it is wrong. You can see I am paralyzed. If you don't believe, you can hit a knife on my leg." The detective laughs and says goodbye while leaving. He asks the chip what to do next. The chip wants to take him to a bar, and after reaching there he shouts while calling the killer's name. A man appears there and Gray asks his name. "Are you one of them who killed my wife?" The man says yes, he was also there. Gray approves the chip and the chip hits him while cutting his face. Now when he asks his name, the killer confesses his name and the man Fisk has given him money for this task. Before Gray asks him about Fisk, the man dies. Elon was trying to shut down the chip, and after feeling it, the chip warns Gray that Elon is trying to shut it down. The chip asks him to go to a hacker, so he will change Elon's input and Elon will lose control of the chip. He goes to the hacker and after writing new inputs on his hand, Elon shuts down 30% of the chip. At first, his one leg and after his half body becomes paralyzed. He reaches the hacker's door but at the same time, Elon shuts down the chip 100%. He sends his men to bring Gray and one of them was the man named Fisk that killed his wife. Fisk becomes furious at the bar owner because he hasn't stopped Gray. After killing him, Fisk discovers Gray's location through the captured device of his companion's eye. On the other side, Gray gives his money to her and asks her to reboot the chip. The hacker notices two people are coming while the chip reboots in Gray's body. His hand starts working again and Fisk comes inside while breaking the door. They notice Gray is crawling but he sees his wife's hallucinations. He doesn't understand what is happening but the chip activates after rebooting and he starts running. Fisk's companion also chases him and they both reach the building's top. They fight with each other and he kills him brutally. He runs from there and arrives at home. His mother notices blood on his body and he is standing on his feet. He explains everything to his mother about the chip. Elon lost Gray and the chip because after the hacker's input Elon couldn't track him. In the next scene, Gray sees his wife alive in front of him. But suddenly she disappears. The detective reaches there and says to Gray they found his wheelchair at the place of the murder. What are his thoughts on it? Gray says yes, he was there but didn't murder anyone. The detective says 3 people are dead and they were under suspicion of your wife's murder. You were present before the murder at every place. Maybe you are making these murders through someone. Gray says if you feel this you can check my call records. The detective doesn't say anything and secretly puts the microphone in his pocket. When she leaves Gray is panicked and says I have to stop all this. The chip says forces him to kill the last man named Fisk. The hacker hasn't entered the inputs properly, so the chip can do whatever it wants. The detective was hearing their conversation but gets confused. Gray moves to kill Fisk while taking the gun. His mother tries to stop him but he leaves in the car. The detective was behind him and he finds the microphone in his pocket. To get rid of the detective the chip controls an electric car and throws it at her car. They leave the detective behind and then the detective goes to his mother. She asks her about everything that was happening there. On the other side Gray asks Fisk, why did you kill my wife? Fisk says our task was to just break your spinal cord, your wife was killed without any reason. He becomes furious and a fight begins but later he kills him. After checking his phone, he discovers Elon is behind all of this. Without thinking anything, Gray goes to Elon and points the gun at him. The detective asks him to throw the gun and as the detective comes closer, he makes her fall. He doesn't want to kill her but the chip wants. Getting a chance, the detective gives an electric shock to him. Elon reveals he has made this chip and before Gray, he used to talk to this chip. This chip wanted a human body and it has chosen you. It hacked your wife's car and caused an accident. Whatever he said to him in the hospital the chip asked him to say. Gray gets shocked hearing all this and Elon tells this was Chip's plan. Now it wants to kill him. If he will stay alive he will make another AI chip like it. The chip again activates and attacks Elon immediately. It also tries to kill the detective but Gray stops and then shoots himself. After finding himself in a hospital bed, he calls the chip but receives no response. His wife was also in front of him and tells him that we got into an accident. You were dizzy for several days. He thinks of all of this as a dream but the scene shifts where the chip was about to end the detective. The detective tries to awaken Gray and says you can't do it, but the chip says Gray isn't here because he's in a better place. This body is now under my control, and the chip shoots the detective. The movie ends here and thanks for your time. Do like and subscribe as it will help the algorithm.